Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Westside Congregation in Rio Rancho. I hope you enjoyed that rendition of Hail to the Chief from President Obama's inauguration. I am Stacy Gabicki. Our speaker today is our consulting minister, the Reverend Dr. Nancy Hitt. Welcome also to those of you who are joining us later online. Our program today is titled A Day of Reckoning. Today is Independence Day, the day we celebrate as the birthday of our nation. We hope you have a lovely day with your friends and family and are able to enjoy the fireworks tonight if you would like to do so. We also hope that you will deepen your understanding of this day and what it means for both our nation and our individual selves through your participation in this program. We have based today's service on principle number 4, a free and responsible search for truth, and the meaning and principle number 6, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Independence is bigger than a single day or a single nation. Today we thank those who have helped craft this service: Bram Cast-Hecht for our animal ministry moment, Carol Eaglehart for our musical leadership, Steve Poyani for the camera work that makes our video possible, Dana Sanford for our sound system, and Bram and Roxy Cast-Hecht for greeting you. Here are the announcements for this week. Today the board is meeting in the green room at 12:30 following our social hour. If you wish to view local fireworks from our parking lot this evening, you are welcome to do so. This is not a church-sponsored event, but you are welcome to park your car and enjoy the view. Today is the first Sunday service that we are officially off lockdown of any sort. We will continue to be vigilant about safety here. There are masks, gloves, and cleaning supplies at the rear of the sanctuary. Masking and social distancing is at personal discretion. Please remember that there are many reasons why people need to protect themselves and respect each other's requests and boundaries. Thank you. Please stand as you are able and join in our chalice lighting with the words that are either on your screen or in your bulletin. May our chalice flame call us to freedom. May it call us to truth and to justice for all the inhabitants of our country and our world. Shalom and amen. Please join me in affirming our aspirations. Life is a gift. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and the mysteries of this great gift. In the light of truth and in the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is our sacrament, and service is our prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another. Shalom. Please remain standing for our opening chorus, hymn number 188, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
We know this, people. You can sing out.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come.
And I always like to think about the camels in the caravan, so I do a little swaying as we sing.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come, yet again, come.
You may be seated.
I invite you now to sit back in your seat, to get as comfortable as you can, remaining upright and yet relaxed. Uncross your ankles, your knees, your wrists, and let the energy flow through your body unimpeded. Close your eyes if you are comfortable doing so, or choose a focal point to hold your gaze. Turn your attention to your breathing. Breathe in fully and deeply. Breathe out completely. In and out. And in and out. Relax into the rhythm of your breath. Set aside the stray thoughts that may appear. Know that you can tend to them another time. Just breathe, relaxed and peaceful. Let a memory of a time you achieved your independence come to mind. A time that you knew you had arrived. That you knew yourself to have achieved a new status. What were the circumstances? Who is there with you? What do you see, hear, or taste? What do you feel? Take note of all of these things. Bring the feeling of your newfound status, your achievement, close to you. Claim it as your own. Feel your own strength, your determination, your triumph. Let it soak into your heart. Then, holding your memory and feelings close, return your awareness slowly to the here and now. Breathing in and out. And in and out. And when you are ready, open your eyes. Shalom. I always feel like I should move on by saying, welcome back, from wherever it is that you were. Each time we gather, we check in with one another. We share the things that have happened and the things that are still happening in our lives with each other. Together, we celebrate joys and we support each other in sorrow and care. For each one of these, Stacy will light a candle. We invite those of you online to light any personal candle you may have when we light our last candle here together. We will begin with those that are listed here in the basket, and then I will bring the mic to anyone who raises a hand indicating that they would like to share something with us. And we will begin today with a joy. Carol Eagleheart has signed the purchase and sales agreement on her house. So, to those of you who were worried that Florida might claim her, no, we get to keep her. Her home is now here. We have a second joy, and that is that Donna Johnston's husband, Gary, had a birthday this past week. He is 62, and that is a really good age for him to be, so we're very happy. Okay, I have a joy. Kathy is leaving on the 10th, that's this week, yes. In her motorhome, traveling to the East Coast. She will be gone for about 2 months. She promises she will miss all of us. She also has a concern that she is taking her sick dog, who will probably die on the trip, but at least she will be with her. So yes, we wish you well. That's an emotionally charged trip. And from Graham and Roxy, we have, today is our kitties, Jet and Char's 7th birthday. Did I get that right? Is this yours?
Melinda and
Oh,
Eric.
Melinda and Eric, sorry.
Sorry, I didn't sign
I
up.
saw kitties and thought of you too. If you look, Roxy is wearing a shirt with kittens all over it. So Melinda and Eric's kittens, Jet and Char's 7th birthday, and they've known them since they were 4 weeks old. That is lovely. Are there other joyous and/or concerns? Okay, let me bring the mic.
I have 2 joys. The first is that our good friend Juba, who underwent a very complicated CERD surgery with about a 20% recovery rate, is doing very well. And so I'm thrilled about that. And my other joy is that Cindy has a birthday next week. And she will not be 62. But she used to be 62. And she is just the right age for her to be too.
Wonderful, happy birthday.
I have a joy. Online, I was contacted by someone I don't know, but you guys might. Her name's Dixie. Yes. She said she's doing well. She's having some mobility issues, so she's not getting out, but she wants to remind us that she is a member of our congregation and she misses all of you dearly.
Yes, Dixie had done some emailing, and we've been sending her the videos of our service lately, so she's sort of sitting in on this.
I have joy and concern sort of together. One of my daughter's cats, Paradox, had emergency surgery last week. She had a tear in his intestines, and he was almost dead when she found him, but luckily had a friend with a vet who took good care of him, and she brought him home the next day, and the joy is he's got light back in his eyes. He seems to be improving. He's still on baby food, but
So since we're doing birthdays, I thought I would mention our kitty Genji, who just turned 13. We don't know when his actual birthday is, but he's the one that I found abandoned in the desert. He was just a little kitten, and we estimated he was born in July sometime, so we gave him Gary's birthday. Which is real appropriate because the two of them really, really bonded.
These services always get me thinking about something that I certainly was not going to think about today. And my moment of independence, thank you, was I got my driver's license, and immediately after, my parents didn't know about this, I took a ride on the Schuylkill Expressway in Philadelphia, the most dangerous high-speed road in the city, just to say, hey, I did it. And I launched.
The Schuylkill Expressway.
A concern that today being Independence Day brought to mind is that driving around Corrales and Albuquerque, I remarked to my daughter a few weeks ago, it's so sad that every time I see an American flag flying in front of a house, I think it must be the house of a Trump supporter. That's so sad. it shouldn't be that way. And maybe it isn't.
I vote we consciously decide for today to see every flag as an appropriate, joyful kind of thing. Anyone or anything else? All right. We would light one last candle for everything that we all still hold in the privacy of our own hearts and minds. And now we light this red candle for the victims of racial oppression, especially on Independence Day. We call for liberty and freedom for all people the whole world over. May we remember that no one is truly free until all of us are fully free. Blessed be. And now I invite Bram to come and share our animal ministry moment with us.
This is by Chris Dufresne, I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, who wrote this book with Sylvia Brown. A totem is an animal spirit or animal that we entrust to stand by our side throughout our lifetime. All members of the animal kingdom, from lions to peacocks, have attributes that our spirits can emulate and connect with our life theme. For example, my totem is a grizzly bear, a symbol of strength, and my life theme is warrior. Now, this little cat's name is Princess, and she says, it was in my email. See, this cat king, deposed from his country, and he had 10 million salmon in a cold vault. And if I gave him Mommy's credit card number, he could pay the tax, get the fish out, and sell them for $1 gazillion. Mom's investment would quadruple then. I thought she'd be proud of me.
Clearly, today is a good day for kittens. Our moment for all ages today is the story of the Liberty Bell. I don't know how much we as adults remember. You probably heard at least part of this over the course of however many years of birthdays you've been celebrating. But the Liberty Bell is a very familiar national icon. Its image has appeared on stamps and coins, been cited in poetry and story, and the bell itself stood vigil at the head of the assassinated Abraham Lincoln's funeral bier when he was laid in state. The image was adopted by abolitionists in the early 1800s. It has had a variety of uses over the years, but none as lasting or powerful as the image of American freedom. The bell began its life by a commission in 1752 by the Pennsylvania Provincial Assembly. This is where if your history's fuzzy, just roll with it. From the London firm of Lester and Pack, subsequently known as the Whitechapel Bell Foundry. The commission was made to celebrate the 50-year anniversary of William Penn's 1701 Charter of Privileges, which was Pennsylvania's original constitution. Particularly forward-thinking were Penn's ideas on religious freedom, his liberal stance with Native American rights, and his inclusion of citizens in enacting laws. Now, the bell had a problem right from the start, which is maybe what happens when you commission something from the nation you are struggling to separate yourselves from. Something just doesn't make sense there. It is made of bronze, primarily a mixture of copper and tin, with trace amounts of lead, gold, silver, and arsenic and zinc. It currently weighs a bit over a ton at 2,080 pounds. And like many historic items, the stories that have grown up around the bell are numerous. It is no longer possible to know exactly what the facts are in regard to its history. There is one story that insists that the bell was not sounded, it was never rung by its founders in England, my roots are showing, before being shipped here. That story tells us that it cracked at its first ringing. It was subsequently recast twice by local workmen here who had never cast a bell before. They worked to correct the proportions of the metals in the bell's alloy. Some reports indicate they succeeded. Others say that the bell sounded awful. It sounded like two anvils clanking together, but it was loud. Other reports simply indicate that no one knows when, where, or how the bell was cracked. It is simply noted that it had been cracked for a long time. Multiple attempts to repair the bell were made. The crack was filed and it was drilled. The idea being to separate the edges of the crack so that when the bell was rung and they vibrated, they would not bump into each other and widen the crack. Ultimately, the bell was silenced. It has not been rung since February 23rd of 1846, when it was rung to commemorate George Washington's birthday. The Philadelphia Public Ledger posted this in its February 26, 1846 edition. The old Independence bell rang its last clear note on Monday last in honor of the birthday of Washington, and now hangs in the great city steeple, irreparably cracked and dumb. It had been cracked before, but was set in order of that day by having the edges of the fracture filed so as not to vibrate against each other. It gave out notes clear and loud, and appeared to be in excellent condition until noon, when it received a sort of compound fracture in a zigzag direction through one of its sides, which put it completely out of tune and left it a mere wreck of what it was. If you visit Liberty Bell Park in Pennsylvania, computer approximations can give you an idea of what the bell sounded like when it was whole. Since then, the Liberty Bell has toured the country on multiple occasions. It is actually owned by the city of Philadelphia and currently rests in Liberty Bell Park, to whom the city gave custody of the bell while retaining their historic ownership. We associate the Liberty Bell with Independence Day. However, it's really completely unclear as to whether or not it actually rang when the Declaration of Independence was proclaimed to the public on July 8th by Colonel John Nixon in 1776. Many bells were rung throughout the city on that occasion, and it's likely that the Liberty Bell would have been one of them. However, there is no specific historical record of that, and the bell was already cracked and limited in use. Regardless of whether or not it actually rang out, the Liberty Bell has always proclaimed freedom and independence simply because that is built into it. There's an inscription at the top of the bell that reads, "Proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants thereof." That's from Leviticus chapter 25, verse 10. The 25th chapter of the book of Leviticus records God speaking to Moses and giving Moses the rules for working the land and for the people in regard to celebrating the Jubilee. Now, a Jubilee was a 50-year cycle made up of 7 cycles of 7 years, and then the last year was the Jubilee year. For 6 years, the people were to work and carry on their business, work being primarily agriculture. In the 7th year, they were to rest and rely on what they had stored and what grew naturally in order to give the land a rest. After 7 cycles of 7 years, the 50th year was a year of Jubilee in which debts were canceled, slaves were freed, and land returned to its original owners. This practice was to remind the people that they held their lives in partnership with God, and that God's love included restoring independence and freedom to all. The people of Philadelphia were highly abolitionist from the start, choosing the passage from Leviticus about the 50-year Jubilee that emancipated slaves seemed a fitting way to honor William Penn on the 50th anniversary of the Charter of Privileges, the original occasion of commissioning the bell. Our nation's history is uneven. It is the history of an expanding group of immigrants and indigenous people who have struggled with what it means to be a nation that proclaims liberty and justice for all. We're still struggling with that. If the bell is a symbol of our noble ideals, then the cracks symbolize our difficulties with living them out realistically. Both are still real and still really shape and influence us as individuals and as a country. But note two things. First, the bell is bigger than the cracks. It's affected by them, but it holds them. It contains them. And those cracks, to quote Leonard Cohen, the cracks are how the light gets in, assuring us that our noble goals are not a dead end, but rather are continually illuminated by the changing realities and awareness around them. So today especially, may our forebears' words be true for us every time we see the Liberty Bell. Let freedom ring. Shalom and amen.
Each week, we thank you for your contributions to this community. We really mean it. Your financial gifts fund our utilities and expenses. Your time and your energy fund our events and programming. Together, each of us gives of ourselves so that we all grow. Thank you. Please join us in singing chorus number 402 from You I Receive.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
What we have before us now is what I've titled A Moment for Listening. I could have called it a musical meditation, so take your pick. We are going to listen to the song, Independence Day, sung by Martina McBride, written by Gretchen Peters. The song is a ballad that tells the story of an 8-year-old girl whose abusive, alcoholic father and desperate mother find a tragic independence on the 4th of July. It is a really unique blend of national and personal independence that challenges us to consider both of these dimensions ourselves as we consider the cost of freedom. So sit back and simply relax, and we'll listen together. Nadia was dancing in the pew. Today is Independence Day, although I've noticed in the past few years that we've shortened its name to the 4th. I want to reclaim Independence Day as a meaningful holiday that every resident of this country can observe with solemn joy. Perhaps one of the reasons that it's been renamed by its calendar date instead of its meaningful title is that we're so far from getting there. Now, I hope that you really enjoyed McBride's song. It's bouncy, it's catchy, and she uses more images for independence and starting over than we might expect to find in a single song. The first time I heard it, I was caught up in the drama of the daughter, who is clearly too young to be independent, and yet has a painful awareness of her parents' relationship being irreparably broken. The girl describes herself as often in the way, so she takes herself down to the fair in town to get out of the way. Even at age 8, some of us have to make independent decisions that turn out to have huge consequences. By the time the story is over, the family house has burned down and both of her parents have died in the fire that it seems her mother set in a tragic decision to free herself and her daughter from an unbearable situation. If this was pure fantasy and never happened in real life, the song would not be as gripping as it is. But these things do happen. People make extraordinary sacrifices to find independence. Ask any immigrant at our nation's borders. Soldiers are not the only ones willing to die for freedom. As it turns out, many people will risk it with a lot less support than an army provides if the need is great enough. Many of us have made decisions in our lives that were specifically designed to free us from oppressive or undesirable circumstances that controlled our lives. Sometimes it starts young, even 8 years old. Perhaps we chose friends that were disapproved of. Perhaps our career choice was not respected. Maybe where we wanted to live met with negativity, or our most cherished spiritual beliefs were ridiculed and rejected. Maybe our political choices risked us being disowned. Any one of these or innumerable other possibilities could smother the person we were trying to grow into. Now, I don't know, with the exception of Tom, who shared one of his memories of independence with us, I don't know what your experiences of claiming your personal independence have been, but I'm sure they were powerful in your own life. And I'll bet that some of them were well worth the fight, the struggle to assert yourself and your autonomy. And of course, some declarations of independence are joyful. My first career was in nursing, as many of you know. I never wanted to do or be anything else. When I was in high school, my guidance counselor tried to convince me that I really secretly wanted to go to college. I did not. I wanted to be a real nurse, one who learned how to be a nurse in a hospital, not a classroom. Even though it was old-fashioned, I wanted to go to a 3-year hospital school of nursing, not a 4-year college where the first 2 years were going to be general studies. I didn't care about the degree they were going to give me. I was going to be Florence Nightingale reincarnated. But my guidance counselor would not let up. College-prepared nurses were the wave of the future, she told me. I could do the work, she was sure of it. My test scores would get me into college, no problem. And there was really no problem, except I needed to focus on clinical nursing, not liberal arts with a nursing focus. So I kept saying no to my guidance counselor, and I applied to hospital schools of nursing. And I knew that the day had arrived. I had arrived when I caught sight of myself in my student nurse's uniform. Mind you, back in the days when they were mid-calf blue with a white pinafore and the cute little white crinoline cap that said I was a student because it didn't have a dark blue band on it yet, but it would when I graduated. And I caught sight of myself walking down the hall, and I simply knew I had arrived. I felt strong and powerful and absolutely right about my choice. Now, I found out later that I had apparently come home in tears one day from school after a particularly persuasive effort on the part of my guidance counselor. And I announced that if she didn't stop trying to convince me to go to college, I wasn't going to go anywhere. I would get a job at the local department store instead, which sent my mother into a panic. She decided she'd heard enough and called the school to tell the woman to back off, that enough was enough. And I have to say, to my mother's credit, I never knew that until years later, because my mother made sure that my independent decision was respected. It was my decision. Nursing brought me years of joy and has shaped my life in more ways than I can count. So I say score 1 for independence. Now, not all campaigns for independence are as successful or as easily won. Sometimes, like the girl in the song, independence is foisted on us. Sometimes it requires really hard choices and sacrifices are made. Perhaps like that of the mother in the song. That woman's independence came about as a result of her death, a price few of us are willing to pay unless the stakes are very high. And sometimes they are. Independence can be costly. It can be costly in regard to what we have to give up to achieve it. It can be costly in regard to the demands of our newly independent status itself. In the song, the independence of our nation is entwined with the independence of the mother and child. Although the combination may seem unusual, I think it's really necessary. Our nation cannot be more independent or better than we are as individuals. The song gives us references to the white dove singing, a traditional symbol of peace and freedom, to the weak being strong, to rolling away the stone, which I hear as vindication of the mother's sacrifice as it invokes resurrection. The line, "May the right be wrong," keeps nudging at me. It rhymes nicely, but on a literal level, it's not usually something that we would be seeking in regard to independence. So I have to tell you, I hear it now as either an image of the self-righteous right being proved wrong, or that the political right is wrong, which works for me. We have images of fireworks, our traditional way of celebrating the 4th of July as the house fire lights up the sky in the song. And the glory and the struggle for independence are encapsulated in that refrain. Now, I'm sure it is no accident that we often celebrate the 4th with a gunpowder-based pyrotechnic, since so much of our history in regard to independence relies on war and images of war. Think about the lyrics to our national anthem. It describes a battle scene and our nation's triumph in the face of the British attack on Fort McHenry, the same British from whom we declared our independence. Perhaps without intending it, the violence of war is built into the foundation of our identity. Now, ultimately, our Declaration of Independence grants us 3 things: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This is the foundational description of our freedom. There are other rights described in our Constitution and its amendments, but those 3 form the foundation for all of the rest. The right to free speech, to vote, to worship as we choose. These rest on exercising the liberty and pursuit of happiness set out in the first declaration. And life, despite our history of executing criminals, comes first. So let's think about freedom for a bit. It's not quite the same as independence, although they are closely related. For example, one may have freedom from something, or we can have freedom for something. While our nation declared its freedom from King George of England, we have also declared ourselves free to vote, to speak our personal truth, to bear arms, to worship as we choose. Now, all of those were reactions to the experience of not being able to do that in the past, particularly under the past rule of King George. But by spelling out our most treasured values, our forebears made it clear that independence doesn't mean that anything goes. They were not advocating chaos. They were advocating responsible freedoms. For example, we really treasure our right to vote. Having a voice in the affairs of our nation is important to us. We have a responsibility to vote as informed citizens. I doubt if any of us would encourage a fellow citizen to go into the voting booth totally unprepared and just make a nice design out of those dots that we have to fill in on the page. With rights come responsibilities. We're currently embroiled in conflict over Second Amendment rights. What are the responsibilities of those who choose to bear arms? Here's the thing. Perhaps the most hopeful and the hardest thing to make sense out of. We have the tools to create an independent nation of people who enjoy their life, liberty, and the pursuit of their happiness. We know what that would take. We could make it happen. We're working on a number of obstacles, like the practices of racism, sexism, genderism, ageism, ableism, economic oppression, and systemic oppression of all sorts. We have noble goals and ideas, and yet we're still bound by what? What is it that holds us back? It's by ourselves and our own human nature. Human beings still perceive difference as life-threatening. If the difference is between you and a lion, okay, yes, that could be life-threatening. You need to know the difference there. That makes sense. But when the difference is between ourselves and each other, that's no longer helpful or adaptive. We've discovered that this is a smaller, more sensitive planet than we once knew. Cooperation is far more advantageous to our survival as a species than competition is. Yet, what do we value most? Even the Olympics, a supposedly peaceful pursuit, is a huge international competition. Which is not to say that there is no place for competition among us, only that we need to be very aware about where and why we compete instead of cooperate. If we really want freedom, we will recognize that it is never free. It's always in jeopardy from us, the very same human beings who crave it in the first place. Thomas Jefferson is credited, although so are several other men, with saying, "The price of liberty is eternal vigilance." The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. Not against alien invaders, but against ourselves and the baser elements of our human nature. We need to be vigilant. We need to be on guard. We need to be willing to restrain ourselves and each other when we want to assert the pursuit of our own happiness at the cost of destroying others. It's a delicate balance. Can you be free if you don't get your own way? How much are you willing to risk, to sacrifice for that? It's a dilemma that our whole world faces, now more than ever, as we interact at the speed of the internet with one another. I began this by saying that I want Independence Day to be able to be celebrated by everyone in this country with solemn joy. I want all of us to understand how deeply we're connected to each other and the planet, our seventh principle in action. I want us all to search for the truth and meaning that will set us free so that we can live our principles, not just affirm them in words. I want us to have a solemn sense of what independence and liberty and democracy mean. I want us to experience joy at the progress that we've made personally and nationally. I want us to juggle the solemnity and the joy of all of that in our personal lives and in the life of our nation. I know we're not there yet, but we'll never get there, no matter how lofty the language and goals of our forebears, if we don't deliberately examine these things and rejoice in the progress we've made. The party is on. Seriously. Leonard Cohen, a Canadian poet and songwriter, wrote this verse in his song, "Democracy is coming to the USA." Democracy is coming to the USA. It's coming to America first, the cradle of the best and of the worst. It's here they've got the range and the machinery for change. And it's here they've got the spiritual thirst. Democracy is coming to the USA. May we make it so, people. May we make it so. Shalom. Now, I know this has not been the most traditional Independence Day observation, and we have the requisite few minutes. So I will happily bring the mic around to anyone who wants to comment or question or whatever. Sorry, so I'll start the back and work from it.
I'm going to tie this back to service we had a couple weeks ago. A lot of people in the LGBTQA plus community became independent involuntarily when they came out to their families and friends and were, pushed away essentially and, forbidden to return. And when you talk about the difference between independence and freedom, even though they were now suddenly independent, they still weren't free to marry, for example, visit their partners in the hospital, etc., etc. So, that's something that came to mind to me immediately when you start talking about the difference between independence and freedom and your moment of independence.
Yes. Thank you.
My moment of independence came as an 18-year-old when I left Fargo, got on my first plane ever and flew out to Philadelphia to move in with a family I had never met in person, had simply spoken to on the phone. And that choice for independence gave my memories freedom to emerge so that I could begin to heal.
Very good. Thank you. Others, Judy?
Two things. Although it may seem strange, my independence came at 18 also, when I decided definitely I was going to marry Marshall. And I did. Actually, I decided when I was 17, but I married him when I was 18. And although people might not think of marriage as independence. It was independence for me. It was independence from the way my folks were loving and good people, but independence from the way they thought and acted, and independence to be the way Marshall and I wanted to be. But the other thing I wanted to say was about voting. July 4th, 1776 didn't give the vote to many, 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 many of the people in this nation. Not only people who were indigenous and black, but also people who didn't own land. So we have come a far way, but not far enough.
Anyone or anything else? I agree that we have come a far way, and so we need to celebrate. Not because we're there, we have not arrived. However, we are definitely on the way, in a really good way. And so I invite us all, if you're going to come back this evening and want to watch fireworks, you know, the space is there, do something that acknowledges those noble and lofty goals that our forebears set forth. Absolutely not perfectly, they were human too, products of their own time. That's why I love the Liberty Bell as a symbol, because that crack lets all this other stuff in. And we used to joke that, yeah, Mom, sure you like the Liberty Bell because it's cracked, because so are you. And I'm okay with that. Now, I'd like to invite you to take the yellow insert, to stand as you're, oh wait a minute, I didn't look at, yes, to stand as you're able, and we'll join together in singing Our Country 'Tis of Thee. Carol adapted these words, and I'm sure you all know the melody to My Country 'Tis of Thee.
I can't stand.
Our country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee we sing. Land where so many died, not knowing hope or pride, from every mountainside let freedom ring. Let music swell the breeze and bring from all the trees sweet freedom song. Now let our conscience wake, and for our country's sake, with every step we take, right ancient wrongs. Let us bring hope at last to those who were outcast. This pledge we bring. Long may our land be bright with freedom's holy light. May we use all our might to let freedom ring.
Please join me now in the words in your bulletin or on your screen as we extinguish our chalice together. May the
Fire we extinguish here live on in our hearts, inspiring us to do and to be people of justice, people of freedom. Shalom and blessed be.
May you cherish your independence even as you embrace the new opportunities and responsibilities it brings. May you respect and affirm the independence of others and support them in their opportunities and responsibilities. Together, may we grow into an interdependent world. Shalom and blessed be. And there is coffee and creamer, etc. in the social hall. I look forward to seeing you there.
Our country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty.